Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show, we're talking about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Nancy Drew, a great episode. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Obviously picking up, where previous episode left off with the whole situation of, Nancy throwing up that thing they used in their magical ritual and everything. Obviously for her, it's like she looks at this as kind of a bad sign considering, everything that's going on with her dad today. She has to testify and everything, so it's a last minute ditch of trying to get whatever evidence she can to exonerate her dad before the time comes. So obviously John, the medical examiner, shows up and everything, and it's like, okay, so where's the body at? And it's like, you guys have looked at the body, correctly, you safely tucked it away. It's like, no, they didn't. It was in a container with some party decorations and stuff like that. And it's like, all right, let's take this to a sanitary place. It's like, yeah, that's why we closed the restaurant down, because you're going to be working for here. It's like, all right, so we're going to have to scrub this place down. There's a whole awkward situation of Nancy, not being too well. And it's like, oh yeah, Bess being like, oh yeah, Kevin got in touch with Owen, he ended up leaving. He seemed like he was kind of, and you had Nancy immediately being kind of like, no, it's okay, drop it. And just as George and Nick are walking up behind her, she goes, oh my God, you slept with my cousin, which I love that she phrased it like that. It's just kind of been like, oh, you and Owen banged. It was, well, that still would have been bad, but it's just like the way she, oh my God, you slept with my cousin. And it's like, okay, and Nancy has to be like, I'm sorry that this is the way you're hearing about this, Nick. And it's just like, Nancy's like, oh, this is so awkward, so let me just go and leave right now. And George and Nick are like, it's like, she's like, you're okay. And he's like, honestly, he was like, he wasn't expecting, he's not too happy about it, but actually he was like, I'm okay with it. I guess it's because of the situation, because he's like, oh, I guess that in-between lane of what, us, whether someone moves on or not, I guess that's kind of past us. But I think for him, he was okay, because I guess truth be told is, I think because he's been feeling what he's been feeling between him and George, that he was kind of okay with Nancy moving on, because there was a part of him already in the process of moving on. So she was suggesting oh, you don't have to sleep on the couch. And Nick's like, oh, he's like, yeah, I wouldn't want to sleep on the couch. I'm like, wow. I was like, okay. So that's happening. Sadly, things kind of fall apart on that front, because a new detective, Tamura, shows up, that basically he, is kind of taking over. We'll kind of get to it later on, but the fact of the matter is, they aren't on the same wave. So the fact is, they try to come up with an excuse. It's like, oh, it's a private party. We're closing down account inventory. That confliction in their stories kind of screwed things up. So it's like, okay, so now we actually have to cover the bases about while they're investigating the restaurant, because they're looking into this whole thing, because of Karen. So they have to open up the investigation. So they have to look into this whole situation with Josh and look into Tiffany's case and everything like that. So the fact of the matter is, that in itself causes issues between George and Nick, that they kind of get at each other's throats, because he's like, we need to get on the same page, because what we just did there was atrocious. We're supposed to be hiding the fact is we've got these bones and stuff like that, which you had Ace and John hiding in the freezer. To try and, well, I also love the fact is that Ace handles that thing for Nancy about tracking the email and stuff like that, but he didn't tell anything about their current predicament, because I was like, I guess a situation I don't want to worry Nancy. She's worried. She got enough to worry about her dad's situation, gathering up the evidence she needed. So I guess she wasn't too worried about it. But the fact of the matter is, he kind of quickly handled that, and it's just it's just them just being terrible at this, because he's like, oh, you guys got nothing to hide unless you got a body in here, and they're like, ha 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 ha. So having to deal with that. The fact is, having to cover up the fact is they've got part of Lucy's skull in there as well. And they're, luckily Bess hid it for them. But the fact of the matter, it's just them kind of being not copacetic, not being on the same wavelength. And it's so awkward, because, and it's kind of sad, because it's there was something happening, they were vibing, and then the moment this happens, they stop not vibing. And even Bess is kind of suggesting, maybe you two shouldn't even hook up. Maybe you kind of aren't meant to be type of situation. Maybe you should just kind of there shouldn't be anything between you. Even later on telling Nick is maybe you two should kind of get some distance from each other. So there's that whole lane of things. I love that Tamura kind of looks into the freezer, but it's like, oh, John and Ace have handled that situation. It's like, oh, there's no bones there. Turns out the reason why is because they've got the bones hidden on themselves. And I love that they drop the bones and like, ooh, sorry, Lucy. So there's that side of things. The other side of things is obviously Nancy trying to gather up evidence to clear her dad. And she's like looking through the case files, but no luck. And she's like, Lucy, I'm literally trying to solve your murder. You can help me out. Papers fly everywhere. Lucy points her in the direction of a knife, a collection of knives, her mom's knives, and it's like, oh, this was the murder weapon, and looking at the actual murder weapon as a knife and realizing it's from her mom's collection, and then thinks about the female hair, and you're like, oh, was it my mom? And that's something that I thrown out there a while back when John had introduced the fact this was a female. I was like, it's going to lean like it might be Carson, it might be not Carson, that it might be Ryan's mom, but I was like, it's most likely going to end up being Nancy's mom. So that's why I was like, okay, so we're finally circling this direction, which even to the point she's asking John to run her hair sample against the hair to see if it's actually, which we'll get to that. But I thought it was interesting because Ace had looked up for Nancy because she was like looking at the spacing on like how the email was written, made her kind of think like, okay, so everyone kind of, I guess like the way Ryan wrote his emails in a particular way, he had a, even though it was typing, he had a particular signature in how he wrote. Like I said, it was like the spacing or something like that, and like the way it was like a spacing and a period. But the other email that called her a whore and everything said that she should die, like that one wasn't written by Ryan, and Ace was able to figure out. And so Nancy meets up with Ryan and be like, I know you didn't kill her, so let's go back and we'll figure this out together because but you gotta tell me everything. So we get insight into understanding why Ryan kept his relationship with her a secret, obviously because of the family situation, but also what it came down to is like when he came to town, he had just found out about Lucy. Like when he came back to Horseshoe Bay to kind of talk to her and everything, it was the night that she had died. And if he brought it up like, oh, they were in a relationship and everything, it would have looked bad. He would have looked suspicious. So he never even publicly grieved. He kind of kept that all bottled up about, Lucy's death. He couldn't even admit like, oh, we were together and everything. But it turns out that the spot that today is like, oh, you met up there at the spot, but it's like, no, that wasn't our spot. Our spot was a ice cream place, and they meet someone there who talks about this. She remembered Lucy being there, but Lucy like was waiting, and it's like you kind of feel bad because like even Ryan kind of had that look on his face, like right. She was here. It's kind of interesting. I'm going to be talking about it, and I'm going to be all over the place, so I do apologize. But it's kind of interesting in the grand scheme of things. We actually think about it. A lot of like Nancy's investigations have kind of always. I mean, granted, the Hudsons are tied to it, but it's like she's always found a way to be circled around Ryan in some shape or form. It's like everything always kind of puts these two together, and just like the fact is that from time to time they're even working on an investigation together, like in this particular episode. But it's just kind of interesting to think about because it's like when you think about where everything kind of started, and you're like, fact is, Nancy's kind of investigating with Ryan is kind of weird. We'll get to all that later on, like I said, kind of breaking this down bit by bit. But the fact of the matter is, it turns out that, it's kind of sad that Lucy was waiting for Ryan because she was actually expecting him to show up, but he didn't. Everett showed up, and he was the last one. It seemed like, oh, he saw her before she died, but they go talk to him, which for him, it's like he was basically telling Lucy to stay away from his family. It was like literally the same thing I'm telling you, Nancy, stay the hell away from my family. Because for, Ryan, it's like, why did you do what you did? It's like your grades were suffering. Like basically, he was going to be an embarrassment to the family, like him not pulling through. And it's like this woman who's of a lower status and she's a townie, so it's like you shouldn't be with her. So it's just all using any excuse to like, oh, you're diminishing the Hudson name, you being with her. But he didn't kill her. The last person, in fact, she saw was Karen. It turns out, sadly, like Karen, trying to make her feel better, signed her up to be Sea Queen and everything because all those rumors came about, like, oh, her sleeping her way to the top and stuff like that. But when she won, all it did was perpetuate what people are already saying, like, oh, she slept her way just to win Sea Queen and stuff like that. So she already had this reputation of sadly being this, they called her a whore and everything, and it's like, this made it worse. Karen's attempt to look after her best friend actually made it worse, and so because of that, Lucy kind of got pissed, and Karen was like, don't talk to me. But noticing she didn't have, and I thought it was kind of interesting. I mean, it makes sense because Ryan didn't go inside, because obviously, to be fair, Karen and Josh were working together to basically kill you. Well, Karen was definitely working to, cover up the fact is that Josh, it was all connected, but still. It wouldn't be all that good because Karen still believes you are responsible for Lucy's death, So there was no, like, I know, like, Nancy's probably thinking like, it's probably not worth going through that. So Ryan just wait outside. But regardless, the fact of the matter is they find out about her journal. It's actually kind of sad when you actually look at her house too, because their house is kind of run down. Even Ryan's like, I thought they would have like destroyed this. It's like, yeah, that's kind of what the town would want you to think. But the fact of the matter is like people have lived in there subsequently, but no one's actually stayed there because the town didn't want, Lucy's house to become like a place that people would gather around and stuff like that. They didn't want it to kind of be a memorial because I think in the grand scheme of things in the town, it would just kind of be like, oh, here's this like giant, here's this house that's literally a memorial to something. So they changed the address because they wouldn't want anyone to know. They didn't want it be kind of a smirch, like a stain on the town's look. I guess is kind of one way to look at it. But the thing was interesting because Lucy didn't want them to find anything, and it's like Nancy's like, I don't understand why. Because even Ryan's like, why? Like, she came to us to solve this and everything. Why would she want you not to do this? So they managed to go inside. Then there's that moment of like, oh, I gotta stay away from that. I'm allergic. And Nancy's like, me too. And I'm like, well, but I shit you not. The moment that happened, I was like, are you two related? I was like, is it going to be revealed that Ryan's actually your dad? Because I start piecing it together. I'm like, how old was Nancy's mom? I was like, did they have an affair or something? But I was like, no, he was in like high school. So that couldn't have been, because I was thinking like maybe her mom was younger than what she is. But it's like, no, because the fact is she was actually Lucy's counselor, so she was definitely older. So I was like, it can't be that she and Ryan had a thing. So, but I thought that was because allergic reactions tend to be. I just thought it was interesting. Like, oh, you just happen to be. It could just be that you just both happen to be allergic to whether it was bees or wasps. I'm assuming it was bees, but it could have easily been wasps. Whatever the case may be. There's a possibility that, you could just be both allergic, but like the chances of you not being related and being allergic to the same thing, because allergies are like a hereditary thing. Like I think it's kind of interwoven in your DNA. Like it's not a guarantee that your children will have the same allergy you do, but I think they have a good chance of it because of a genetic thing. Once again, I am an idiot when it comes to biology. That's me. I could be someone who's like into biology is like, oh, you idiot, it's totally not this, blah, 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 blah. I admit I'm an idiot. That's what I thought, but I mean, granted, like I said, we'll get to it soon enough, but that was my immediate thought. But I was like, how's that gonna I was like, maybe that's another, I feel like that'd be something. But nevertheless, then you had Lucy attacking them the way she did because she didn't want them to find like the diary or whatever. And I thought that was so interesting because like once again, it's like Lucy's always been like solve this, but it's like now that she doesn't want them to find her journal. It's like they're trying to understand why. But lo and behold, they find Lucy's journal and they finally understand why. And Nancy reveals it in open court that it's like, no, it wasn't her dad, it was responsible. And she kind of gave insight into everything that Lucy was dealing with. And then it finally came out. Like, what happened is Lucy killed herself. And it's like, damn. It's like... And it adds this layer of, oh my God, this is like because Nancy brought up the fact is this all happened because of the reputation that she had. Like people besmirched her name because it also came down to it that Everett, in an attempt, because Lucy wouldn't break up with Ryan, she destroyed her attempt, like made it so that Lucy's mom lost her job. The fact is, because of that, Lucy couldn't get into the school she was trying to go for. So basically ruining their lives. So to kind of just appease Everett, broke up with Ryan, never telling Ryan why they broke up. And it's so sad in the grand scheme of things, and Nancy kind of explains all of that is why Lucy died. Like the fact that why she killed herself, because, her final entry was about that. Because for her, it's like, because she went over to, Carson and Nancy's mom's place and ended up, seeing them being so happy and seeing kind of like a happy place like that, happy family and everything. It just made her just kind of like, I think, a little sad, and especially them treating her so nicely. She looks at such a happy, beautiful life and wishes that was her life. So I think that sadly pushed her over the edge, and it kind of makes some other stuff kind of come back full circle. We'll get to that soon enough, but the fact of the matter is, Nancy even explains it. This whole town created some myth about who killed Lucy. Because once again, Karen had brought that up earlier earlier in the season about how it was kind of effed up that her best friend became like a ghost story. That like kids are like, be careful, Lucy, like made her into like this ghost story and everything. But in the grand scheme of things, the reason she died is because this town pushed her to do it. That this town is the reason why she died. No one murdered her. Well, if someone did, this town did by doing what they did to her. An entire town turned against this girl, and this high school girl, you know, and it's like, it's heartbreaking to realize that. And at the same time, you're like, why didn't Lucy want Nancy to know that? We'll get to that soon enough, but all of this was enough to exonerate Carson, because it was verified that that was that was Lucy's handwriting, that was Lucy's book. So it was enough to kind of get, because even, you know, Nancy was asking Ace, like, why would she not want me to find out how she died and everything? Well, looking at some DNA later on, and it's like, oh, that hair sample, John's like, you might want to sit down for this, Nancy. And then she confronts her dad. I was like, okay. I was like, so this has to, it's like, yeah, I defended you in court. I did everything to help you. And at the end of the day, you lied to me. You continued to lie to me. I was like, is this about your mom? I was like, what is it about? Mom was there with Lucy. And it's like, oh, I was like, where's this about to go? And he was like, we were there together. And then the moment, obviously the whole point of it was showing, like, I was like, oh, wait, so you both were there. So I was like, what is it? Where's this going to go? I was like, so Lucy killed herself in front of him, but it's like, she had the baby. It was like, oh, she was pregnant. I was like, Ryan didn't know. And I was like, yes, this is what I was looking for. And it's like, okay, so and it's like, wow. So this starts piecing everything together. Why Lucy picked Nancy. She could have haunted anyone, but she haunted Nancy. I mean, because it's a grand scheme of things of just like, Nancy's the detective that she is, but now you understand why she wanted Nancy to figure this out, because she wanted her daughter to, you know, find out. That's also why she hid, why she didn't, because like Nancy finding out how she died, she didn't want Nancy to know that, because she didn't want Nancy to have a memory of her like that. Like, I'm the mother you never got to know, but I didn't want you to know about me, because she probably felt ashamed or something. She, you know, sadly, she had nothing to be ashamed of. That town pushed her to do that. But the fact of the matter is that kind of explains why she didn't want Nancy to find out how she died, because she felt, you know, sad about it. But it's also like, why only Nancy? Why she presented this all to Nancy and everything, and it's like, because she wanted Nancy to solve this, because, you know, it was her daughter. But maybe this was also her roundabout way, because at the end of the day, it's like, you know, because it's like, why didn't we have to find Lucy's bones? Why was that so important if she killed herself? So like, but now it's because she wanted Nancy to find out the truth, that you're mine, my little girl. And it's like, and the fact that she gave, you know, Nancy to Carson and his wife, asking him to look after her baby, because it's like, if Everett ever found out, he'd come after me, which also means that's another thing to this too, because he wanted her, and to kind of hide the fact that she was pregnant. The fact is, it shows that Everett knew, and he was like, get rid of the baby, but she couldn't do it. And so that means Nancy is a Hudson, and so she has a right to the fortune, which is also crazy, because that's why I bring up the fact is her, and maybe that's also why, like, anytime like Ryan and Nancy were together, it kind of like Lucy would do stuff. It's just because they're maybe like her attempts to, it's like, it's right in front of you, you don't even realize it, and now it's like, holy crap, is she going to tell Ryan the truth? That, which it makes this whole situation weird and awkward, because it's like, well, because of the bad blood between the Marvins and everything, her being with Owen, and it turns out that you're a Hudson, because you blame Everett, because he blames Everett for his uncle Sebastian's death. So it's just like, now it's going to turn into this like Romeo and Juliet thing, like two Warren families, the Marvins and the Hudsons. But it's like, holy crap. That's a lot, because for Nancy, you know, because for Carson, he's explaining like the fact of the matter is they left town to kind of, you know, solidify the story and everything. But the fact that, you know, this is their baby and everything. But the fact is, they came back and they loved the baby, and they made sure the baby, you know, raised her, and she became this smart, very curious person. And it's like, holy crap. You know, sadly, that's probably the secret her mother took to the grave and everything. And it's like, this is what her dad's been hiding from her the entire time. It's like, holy crap. And it makes so much sense, dude. I love that twist of like, her not only is she Lucy's child, she's Ryan Hudson's child. Once again, making her, she actually has a claim to the Hudson fortune, essentially, now. But I'm curious to see what Ryan's going to do when he's like, wait, what? What's everyone else going to do? I wonder how long is it going to be before Nancy tells anyone else the truth? Because actually, John looks at the bones and said because of the bones and everything, she gave birth. I wonder, well, because Ace was nearby, but I don't know if just only John and Nancy currently know. Because obviously, like, you know, you had, well, we'll get to it soon enough, but it's like, I wonder, did Ace hear about, like, oh, you know, so it's like, holy crap. So where is that all going to go from here? I'm so curious. another angle to this is a conversation between Ace and McGinnis, where McGinnis is like, oh yeah, Detective tomorrow, he's going to be around because he's like, I'm tired of all this corruption. I'm like, yeah, it makes sense. Literally 2 cops under you have been corrupt. You had that one dude that was working for the Hudsons, and then you also had the other dude, the one who tried to kill Ace and Laura. But you also have, Karen being corrupt too. Probably doesn't also help where you live in a town where it's like the Hudsons kind of run things a little bit to their money and influence. But it's mainly like 2 corrupt cops under you. It's like he wants to kind of get a fresh start, but it means like tomorrow's going to be the new. I keep saying tomorrow, but I don't think it. I thought that was his name. Is it tomorrow? It's something like that. New detective dude is going to be the new guy in town, which McGinnis was like, yeah, you and the friends might not want to do any illegal stuff because he'll come down hard on you, which we also see the fact of the matter is the piece of Lucy's skull is missing, and it seems like he has it because he knows they were hiding something, so he snuck back in there and got it, but he doesn't have access to all the bones, only that one because that was the only one that was out and about at the time. So it's like, okay, so what is he going to do with that? It's like, well, the fact of the matter is he might try to use it as a means of reopening the case or whatever. Or maybe it might be a twist where it turns out he's actually working for the Hudsons type of situation. So he might be a dirty cop. Throwing it out there now, but we'll have to wait and see. Another element to this is the fact is, George and Nick being the whole thing of like, yeah, maybe we should kind of distance this up. Maybe you should sleep on the couch. It's like, yeah, maybe, maybe we should just be co-bosses and like co-bosses, friends, or at least friendly. And they kiss. And you're like, oh, because, everything kind of works out. But at the same time, you're like, well, the Nancy and Owen situation is going to get complicated because, well, just because, let's not forget, Owen almost died last episode because his price to pay for the, I'm literally blanking on the thing's name that was you're supposed to make the wish to and everything, but now it kind of came back on Nancy, so obviously it's still kind of like, oh, things could go bad. Let's not forget, Georgia still got the whole thing of like, oh yeah, I kicked over the bucket of blood, and it's like, so I'm probably going to die within a year or something, like, which that's something that's kind of still foreboding and foreshadowing of like, okay, so what's to come. So a hell of an episode, dude. I am so curious to see where we go from here, because now the Lucy situation's been dealt with. There's still, I guess, more to deal with, like the Hudsons and also Nancy having to come to terms of like, oh, my parents aren't my parents and they've been lying to me my entire life. And, it'll make you look at your parents, in particular your mom, because she always held her mom to a certain high standard, and now knowing that your mom kind of lied to you, it's like, yeah, you're parents, they raised you and everything, but that's still like, that means you've only gotten to, the sad thing is you got to know your mom, because even what did Nancy say in court? She was like, I'm not going to remember the girl who died, I'm going to remember the girl who lived, and so I think Lucy will appreciate that. And once again, I believe that's why she didn't want Nancy to know the truth about how she died. But the fact of the matter is, you never actually got to really know your mom. I mean, you kind of have through this investigation, but sadly, you never actually get to know her. Granted, your real dad is still alive, which that's going to be a hell of a conversation. So I am so curious to see where this all takes us. Granted, we'll be waiting a little while because Nancy Drew is going on a break and will not be returning until April 8th. So do keep that in mind. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, low light to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.